Hey there, this is Amelia here. Welcome to Amelia's crossdressing story. Today we are going to share a story called Trip to Paris Part 3. By Teddy. For more interesting and exclusive stories, please subscribe to my channel and support me at Patreon. Ronnie and I have talked about it a number of times. And I don't have a problem with it. In fact, I don't look at Ronnie as black, or white, or any other color. I look at her as Ronnie. When I first met her in physics class, I just thought of her as a girl with a nice tan. And, when she first told me she was black, I just figured, okay, so what, she's a nice girl, needs help with her schoolwork, and is very pretty on top of it. So, I look at Ronnie for what's in her heart. And, I like what I see. And, your family? My mom's first comment about Ronnie was, cute girl. And Dad mentioned that they had met you at a party, or something. He did say that you were a pretty black woman, and that Mr. Gishtard was white. And nothing more was ever said about it. The more that Ronnie came over, the more they saw Ronnie for who she is. And took a liking to her. My youngest sister really took a liking to her, especially when she found out how fluent she was in French. I think my mom knows, or at least suspects, how we feel about each other. And I figure that's why they gave me the trip. How do you and Mr. Gishtard feel about me? Jason, we have watched the two of you these past few weeks. You are both young, but we see ourselves in you. And you are mature beyond your years. The two of you have something special between you, and someday it may come to something. We were very glad that you came to visit. Shanta was really depressed when we came back here. And I was almost ready to have her go back to the States, to live with Amy. But, when you told her that you were coming to visit, we had our Shanta back. It was like the life had been put back into her. Please, don't ever hurt her. That is the last thing I would do. And, he gave her a kiss on the cheek. Phils. Just take care of her. I will. Later that evening Ronnie and Jason were sitting in the garden, and Jason said, I think your mom knows about today. I think she guessed. She asked me why I had been crying, and what was wrong. And, I told her that nothing was wrong, but I guess my smile gave me away. Why? When I was helping her with the dishes, she asked me what kind of tears you were crying, happy or sad. I told her that I thought that they were happy ones. And then we had a talk about interracial couples. And some of the things that she said told me that she knew. She even called me Phil's son. Ronnie smiled and replied, she knows. Want to go somewhere special tomorrow? Sure. Where? A little fishing village, down the coast. The next day they headed down the coast. They arrived in a pretty little fishing village, parked the car, and started walking hand in hand around the town. They ended up at a small Catholic church, and Ronnie said, Mom was born in this village, she and Dad were married in this church, and I was baptized here. They went in, and were met by the priest, who remembered Ronnie, and said, Shanta, my child. I'm glad to see you again. Thank you, Pear. This is a very special friend from America, Jason Blackwell. Jason, this is Father James. And, in perfect English, Father James said, Welcome my son. You're a long way from home? Yes, Father, Jason replied, I'm spending my summer here. And, Shanta brought you to visit our little fishing village? Yes, sir. Shanta. Is this a very special friend? Do we need to talk? Pear. I just wanted to show him where Mom was born, and the church. I'm here when you need to talk. Thank you, Pear. I know. Are you going to visit your grandparents? Yes. That's another reason I came today. It's Grandmere's birthday. You two have a nice day. I hope to see you both again soon. And, it was nice to meet you, Jason. Take care of Shanta. And, come to Mass one Sunday. We may just do that, Pear, Ronnie said. It was a pleasure to meet you, Father, Jason added. As they walked out of the church, Jason said, I didn't know I was meeting your grandparents? Not really. They're buried in the cemetery next to the church. And I like to come here to visit. I'm sorry. Don't be. You didn't know. They walked hand in hand over to the cemetery and to a large headstone. Ronnie knelt down and crossed herself. And Jason knelt down next to her. He looked at the dates on the stone. The dates of death were the same for both, and by the dates he figured out that they had passed away while she and her parents were in the States. As they stood back up, he put his arm around her and asked, "You miss them very much, don't you?" "Very much. My grandmere and I were very close when I was young. I was her only grandchild, and we did a lot of things together. It was very hard when Per was transferred to the States, but we did visit back and forth. What really hurt was we were in America when they had the accident and couldn't say goodbye when they died. It's very peaceful here, and I've visited a number of times in the past year just to think about many things. But mostly you." He just held her close as they stood there. She took a deep breath, sighed, looked at him, smiled, and said, "That was a sad time and this is a happy time. And I'm hungry. There is a nice little cafe down on the waterfront." They walked down to the cafe. She was right, it was little, but did have outdoor tables that overlooked the waterfront, and the food was good. They sat there for a while, before Jason asked, "What did Father James mean when he said, 'Do we need to talk?'" "Marriage." "Oh. The priests like the couple to come to a marriage class, and also sit down and talk with them about the responsibilities. Does he know something I don't? I just think he thought that because we were there, that we wanted to talk. You'd like to be married in that church, wouldn't you?" "Yes. That would be wonderful." He just smiled at her. They sat there, enjoyed their meal, and just talked about nothing in particular. Then she became quiet and sat there and thought for a long time. He finally asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "The black and white thing again?" "No. I'm over that. You don't have a problem with it, and I shouldn't." "I'm glad." "So, what's going on?" "Something that happened just before I met you. And I think you need to know about it. You've been upfront with me about everything, and I need to be that way with you. If it happened before I met you, then so what? It's more of who it happened with that's important. Tell me." "Amy." "Amy? Puppy?" "Yes. Only once. It happened after I broke up with the boyfriend that I told you about when we first met. The one that I broke up with just before our junior year. I was really down in the dumps. And, being my best friend, I was spilling my heart out to Amy. One thing led to another, and we ended up making love. It wasn't my thing, and we talked long and hard about it. She understood, and we're still best friends. And, when I get married, I want her as my maid of honor." "Puppy is a lesbian?" "I would never have guessed." "No. She's bi." "That's all that was bothering you?" "Yes. I thought you should know. It was a one-time thing. You were hurt, needed consoling, and Amy was there. And it just happened. You're all right with it?" "Sure. Like I said, it just happened one time, a long time ago. And I love you. But there is one thing that I want you to promise me." "What?" Ronnie asked, a little puzzled. "Don't ever lose that cute French accent." She smiled, leaned over, and kissed him. And said, "Non, mon Dieu. Jamais." "No, my sweet. Never." 2 weeks later was Ronnie's 19th birthday. Her parents held an open house for her. All of her friends and family were there. Jason had met most of her friends over the past few weeks. But this was the first time he had met most of her relatives. He met aunts, uncles, cousins, and her father's parents. It was like a family reunion for her. Jason gave her a very nice heart-shaped pendant. His parents even called that evening to see how things were going with him and to wish her a happy birthday. Then on one rainy day not too long after her birthday, Jason and Ronnie were home alone. And they were sitting in the garden under the awning, enjoying the warm summer rain and just talking. Ronnie suddenly became quiet. "What's wrong?" Jason finally asked. "Nothing." "Then why so quiet?" "Just thinking about something Mir taught me a long time ago." "What was that?" "To save myself for that someone special." "And, have you?" "Yes." "And, you've been very good. Stopping when I've asked you to. And, I know it's been hard for both of us. That's why you broke up with that boyfriend just before we met. Wasn't it?" "Yes." He just smiled at her. And they sat there, cuddled together, for a while longer. Then out of nowhere, Ronnie whispered, "Make love to me." "What?" "Make love to me." "Are you sure?" Without a word, she got up, took his hand, and led him to her bedroom. When they got there, she turned to him, kissed him very deeply, looked him in the eyes, and said, "Yes." They slowly undressed each other and saw each other's completely naked bodies for the first time. When all their clothes were piled on the floor, she led him to her bed, laid down, and pulled him down next to her. He slowly and gently made love to her for a long time. His hands, followed by his lips, explored her body and all its secrets. Her breasts felt so much better unencumbered by a bra. So soft and sensual. Her nipples hardened with his touch. She returned his love. After what seemed like 5 minutes to them, but was actually almost an hour, he knelt between her legs, and afterwards they laid there, looking at each other. He brushed the hair out off of her face, and whispered, "I love you so very much." She whispered back, "Lover. You are my dreams. I love you more than you will ever know." They kissed very deeply, and just held each other for a long time. It was getting late, when they finally got out of bed. She kissed him, and he whispered, "If you keep this up, we'll never get out of your bedroom." With a smile, she whispered back, "That would be nice." And kissed him again. That was the first of many times that they made love that summer. In early August, their thoughts turned to Jason going back home to start college. Neither of them were very happy with the idea. In fact, whenever it came up, Ronnie would become very quiet. One idea was for Jason to go to school in France. But his French wasn't that good. Another was for her to come back to the States with him. Or, the one that they never mentioned, her staying in France, and him going home. One morning, Ronnie was up earlier than usual, and went to the kitchen where her mother was. Her mother said, "You're up early, Shanta?" "Yes, Mir." "Can we talk?" "Of course. And, I think I can guess what it's about. Jason has to go home soon, and you don't want him to." "No, Mir. I don't want to be away from him. We're in love. Very much in love. I know we're only 19, but we've spent a lot of time discussing how we feel about each other. I've known for a while now how you two feel, and it wasn't hard to figure out. I didn't think he would have spent his whole summer here if there wasn't something. What do you want to do? Marry him. And go back to America with him? Yes. You are very young for such a big step. Are you sure? Yes, Mir. How old were you when you and Per were married? 17 and 18. I wanted to stay in America a year ago. And I now know that it was because of the way I felt about him. Yes, your Per and I were young. And yes, I did know you wanted to stay, and why? Does he feel the same way about you? Yes, Mir. Very much so. Does he have a problem with an interracial marriage? No. He's never had a problem with us. I'm the one that had the problem. But I think I'm over it. You had the problem, Shanta? It was more out of my love for him and not wanting him hurt. I see. Will he ask you to marry him? If he doesn't, I'll ask him. Shanta, that's not proper. I know. But. Fee, if that's your heart. Then it's what should be. Thank you, Mir, and she hugged her mother. Later that morning, Jason and Ronnie were at what had become their favorite beach. They were enjoying the warm sun and water. As they lay on the blanket, she said, I had a talk with Mir this morning. About? Us. He rolled over, looked at her, and said, what about us? You going back to the States. And, you. Being with you. In what way? She rolled over, looked at him, and said, as your wife. He smiled at her, and asked, what did she say? One of her little sayings. If that's your heart. Then it's what should be. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Yes. And, you want me to ask, Shanta Renee Gistard, Mtfstories vu? Shanta Renee Gistard, will you marry me? With a big smile, she said, you have learned some French. Oui. Je vous épouserai, Jason Allen Blackwell. And, yes. I'll marry you, Jason Allen Blackwell. She pushed him down on the blanket and kissed him long and deep. You know it'll be hard while we're in school. We'll probably end up living in the married students' apartments. Or maybe with my parents, he said. I don't mind if you don't. Besides, my mother's parents set up a small trust for me, that's mine when I'm 21 or marry. Jason, with a grin, said, oh. That's it. You want to marry me to get the money. She punched him in the arm. They tussled a little and ended up in a clinch. As they were picking up their things to head home, he said, well, I guess I'm going to have to ask your father's permission tonight, call my parents, and buy you a ring. Mom will probably have told him about our little talk this morning. You think? She can't keep a secret. Do you really think we can make this happen before we have to leave? Yes. If we get moving on it. And, I like that word. What word? With a grin, she said, we. That evening at dinner, Jason asked Ronnie's father for his permission to marry his daughter. He could tell by the smile on her mother's face that she had already told him. Her father said that he would be very proud to have Jason as his son-in-law. They talked for a while, and then they called Jason's parents and told them. From what they heard from his parents, they weren't surprised. And, to Ronnie's surprise, Jason told them that they wanted to have a church wedding in a small Catholic church where Ronnie's parents had been married. And, of course they wanted them and his sisters there. And, that as soon as they had the details worked out, they would call back. Then Ronnie called Amy. Hi, puppy. It's Ronnie. I'm just fantastic. Yeah, he's wonderful too. I was wondering, is your passport in order and what you're doing at the end of August? Oh, nothing really important. I just want you to come over here and be my maid of honor. You could hear Amy scream in the next room. And, Ronnie said, calm down. Calm down. I know it's short notice. And, we'll be coming back to the States a week or so later. Ronnie and Amy kept talking for a while. Mrs. Gistard got Jason's attention and called him out of the room. He was back just about the time Ronnie was saying goodbye Amy. She wasn't too excited. Was she? Jason asked. No, not at all, Ronnie said with a big smile. Can she make it? She thinks so. I just have to let her know when. Let's go out in the garden for a while. Ronnie and Jason went out into the garden. Jason said, you know I don't have a ring for you yet. But, I do have something that might be better. He then took out a small box and said, your mom gave me something special to give you. He opened the box, and in it was an old, but very pretty, engagement ring. She looked at the ring, then at him, and said, that's Grandmere's ring? Your mom told me that since you were her only grandchild, your Grandmere left this for you in her will, and wanted you to have it when you married. So, your mother figured that until I got you a ring, you could wear this one. He slipped it on her finger, and the tears started. He just held her for a long time. Finally he whispered, "Your mom said that we need to talk with her." He got up, helped her up, and they walked back to the house hand in hand. As they walked in the house they were met by her mother. Ronnie hugged her and said, "I love you so much." "I love you too, Fee." Then looking at Jason, with a little smile, she said to him, "Jason, you've made her cry again. Tears of happiness, I hope?" "Yes, Mir," Ronnie answered for him. "Into the kitchen with you too. We have a lot to do, to make this happen before the end of the month." They followed her to the kitchen, and sat around the table. Ronnie's mother started with, "French law only reorganizes a civil marriage. So, you two have some things to do. You need to go to the city hall and apply for a marriage certificate. Then they will post the marriage bans for 10 days. After that, you go back to the city hall and have a civil ceremony performed by the mayor or someone like that. And your father and I can be your witnesses for that, if you like." "That would be nice, Mir. And it doesn't sound that bad having a civil ceremony." "But what about a church ceremony?" Ronnie said. "What church?" Ronnie looked at Jason and then said to her mother, "We thought where you and Per were married." They saw a tear come into her mother's eye as she said, "That would be wonderful. But we have to get through the civil ceremony first. And there is some paperwork you need to do." "How much?" "Well, you are both 19 and past the age of consent, so you don't need either our permission or Jason's parents' permission. There is also a 40-day residence requirement that you both already meet. Jason will need his passport, and both of you will need your birth certificates. Do you have a copy with you, Jason?" "Yes," Jason replied. "Everyone said it would be a good idea to have a copy with me." "Good. Then, you both will need a certificate of celibacy." "No problem. Right?" Ronnie again looked at Jason, then down at the table, and said, "No, Mir. No problem." Ronnie's mother just looked at the two, shook her head, and said, "Amor. Just don't let your father find out." And continued with, "I don't know if they require it in Brest, but Jason may need an affidavit of law. This is something that states that he is eligible to be married in France, and that the marriage will be recognized in the States. Then you both need a medical certificate, and I'll call my physician tomorrow morning for that. Then you have to have proof that you've lived here at least 40 days, and I think if your pair and I provide a notarized statement to that fact, that it will be fine. But I'll check with our lawyer." "Whoa! I didn't realize it was so complicated," Jason said. "It won't be bad. I'll even try and contact our lawyer tonight and see what he can do. Now, if you really want the church wedding, you had better drive down there and see what Père James can do on such short notice." Later that evening Mrs. Gishtard found the couple and told them, "I was able to talk to our lawyer, Mr. Merle, and he said that he'll have everything ready at his office tomorrow morning. He also knows a doctor that can do the blood tests and have the results by the end of the day. He'll call the doctor from his office while you're there." The next day, the couple visited the lawyer's office and filled out a number of forms. He called the doctor and got them an appointment. The lawyer told them to come back tomorrow morning and he would have all their papers in order. And then they could go to the city hall and apply for the marriage certificate. Jason and Ronnie stopped at the doctor's office, filled out other forms, and had their blood taken. After they left the doctor's, they headed down the coast to the little fishing village to see Père James. But first they stopped at the little cafe for lunch. Then they walked to the church, where Père James was just finishing mass. Afterwards he saw them waiting, he walked over to them and said, "Shanta. Jason. It's good to see you again, my children." "Thank you, Père," Ronnie said. "Is there something I can do for you?" "Yes, Père. Remember that talk that you said we could have any time?" He smiled and said, "Yes, my child. Can we have it?" They spoke with the priest for a little over an hour. And, as they drove back to Brest, Ronnie said, "A couple of trips to the fishing village, before the end of the month, won't be too bad." "No. It's a pretty drive. And, I'll have pretty company," Jason replied. When they got back home, they filled Ronnie's mother and father in on everything that they had found out. and that they were lucky that the last Saturday of August was open for a wedding at the church. Phone calls were made to the States, to both Jason's parents and Amy, giving them full details. Then calls were made to various family members in France. Ronnie got a very worried look on her face, and said to her mother, "Mir, a dress. Honey, would you like to wear my dress?" "Oh, Mir. Yes. We'll have to have it altered a bit. But I think we can manage that." That's all for now. See you in the next video. For more interesting stories, please subscribe to our channel, and for exclusive content, please join us on Patreon. Link in the comment.